Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly fascinating, deeply poetic piece of writing titled Rational Choice. It was penned by the author Oluyomi Oladavid back in August of 2023, and honestly, it immediately grabbed my attention. Why? Because she completely flips our traditional understanding of logic and value right on its head. It's not some standard list of rules or a dry academic paper. Instead, she uses these brief, striking poetic contrasts to teach us about how we assign worth to the things in our lives. But before we dive into her verses, we really have to ask ourselves, what actually defines a truly rational choice? I mean, how do we define logic when it comes to value? Society usually tells us that bigger is always better, right? That wealth is obviously superior to poverty, and that acquiring more is the most logical goal you can have. But Oluyomi challenges those everyday assumptions right out of the gate. She forces us to ask if the quote-unquote logical choice is actually the most ethical or the most fulfilling one. Section 1, Defining a Rational Choice. She starts right off by contrasting a narrow path with a broad street. She points out that the restricted route, that narrow path, is actually the better option. And when you think about it, a narrow path often carries purpose, direction, and intense focus. A broad street might be incredibly easy to travel and super popular, but it doesn't necessarily lead you where you specifically need to go. She also mentions a narrow top being better than a common house. In her view, the focused, intentional choice is always the rational one. She builds on this perfectly with her comparison of a watchful aisle against a blind park. Think about the imagery here. An aisle is isolated, it's small, it's surrounded by boundaries. A park is expansive and sprawling. But she argues that an aisle that is watchful, aware, vigilant, and alert completely trumps sprawling ignorance. A massive space where absolutely no one is paying attention, the blind park, is fundamentally less valuable than a tiny space where there is genuine awareness. Section 2. The Virtue of Humility. Here, she boldly argues that a small virtue is significantly superior to a mighty vice. It is so easy to be impressed by things that are mighty or grandiose, even if they're fundamentally flawed or destructive. But she's telling us that it is far more rational to prioritize ethical integrity. No matter how small or seemingly insignificant it might look to the outside world, that tiny virtue is infinitely better than large-scale, impressive wrongdoings. She translates this beautifully into the physical world, writing that a little light is better than lofty night. Just picture that for a second. The night sky is vast, it's infinite, it's incredibly lofty and overwhelmingly huge. But a single tiny little light has the power to pierce right through all of it. She is proving that a small amount of clarity or truth cuts right through massive darkness. Size doesn't dictate power when it comes to the truth. Taking this philosophy right into our daily habits and sustenance, she notes that small green is actually better than great meat. This is such a wonderful celebration of humble sufficiency over gluttonous excess. It's a very grounding, rational reminder that what we actually need to survive and thrive is often quite simple and modest. The constant pursuit of greatness can sometimes just be unnecessary indulgence. So, the crucial point of this entire theme is captured perfectly when she weighs little enough against arrogant greed. She firmly establishes her belief in modest contentment. Having little, but having it be enough, is the truly rational, healthy choice. Greed, even when it masquerades as ambition or success, is fundamentally arrogant, and ultimately it's irrational, because it's a hunger that literally can never be satisfied. Section 3. Peace over vain conflict. Now she asks us to examine our relationship with power, status, and conflict. She clearly values quiet harmony above all else, stating unequivocally that poor peace is vastly preferable to a vain conflict. We see it all the time. Conflicts that are heavily funded, deeply entrenched, full of pride and vanity. But she argues that peace, even if it lacks wealth, glamour, or status, even if it is entirely poor, is always the superior, more rational choice. Peace allows for existence. Vain conflict just consumes it. I absolutely love this next one. Looking at duty and hierarchy, she notes that a watchful soldier entirely surpasses a sleepy general. It strips away the illusion of titles. She is valuing the active diligence and responsibility of the lower ranks way over the lazy, inattentive authority of the elite. Rationality, in her eyes, is found in action and awareness, not in your rank or your title. In the same vein, she points out that an obedient servant is better than a rebellious heir, and an obedient one is better than a noisy crowd. It's all about action over noise. She turns the mirror right back on us here, In the text, she writes that a poor sea is better than wealthy pond. So, let me ask you, would you prefer the wealthy pond, a space that's rich but small, confined and stagnant, or the poor sea, which might lack concentrated riches but offers vast, untamed, boundless freedom? She's challenging us to deeply evaluate the kind of environment we actually want to build for our lives. Section 4. The Mind Behind the Words. This brings us to the author herself, Oluyomi Oladevid. Through her own profile, she shares that she is a Nigerian who deeply, truly loves people. She is highly dedicated to global development and transformation. She's built an incredible platform around her specific insights, and her entire worldview is rooted in this massive desire to see positive, meaningful change in the world. Throughout her impressive career, she influences strategy by generating real solutions. She does this by providing technical insights, writing opinion articles, drafting policy briefs, and maintaining a fierce commitment to global development. You see, she isn't just writing poetry in a vacuum. She is someone who actively works to provide clarity and influence policy in the real world. That practical experience makes her poetic definitions of rational choices carry so much more weight. But beneath the policy and all that strategy, her spiritual foundation acts as the ultimate anchor for her work. It's beautifully expressed in this quote from her profile. "My Father God owns and rules the universe. He is the wheel within my wheels." This deep, abiding faith serves as the absolute bedrock for how she defines a rational choice. To her, aligning with moral virtue, humility, and peace isn't just logical. It is a direct reflection of a higher divine order. Section 5. Applying these rational choices. I want to leave you with a final, lingering thought to carry with you today. In a world that is completely obsessed with being great, with having the broad street, the lofty night, the wealthy pond, and being part of the noisy crowd, how will you rationally choose the small? As you go through your week and face your own choices between the loud crowds and the quiet, narrow paths, I really hope Oluyomi Oladevid's insights help you see the immense rational power in choosing humility, vigilance, and peace. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I encourage you to look closer at the small choices in your own life.